Oddities. Welcome back to another episode of Midnight Curiosities. I'm Curator Raquel.
And I'm Curator War Beauty.
Coming at you live from your parents' basement.
Right in your parents' basement.
Yeah.
But don't go look for us.
We've been here the whole time, and we saw what you did.
You're out of crackers, by the way.
Who keeps crackers in the basement?
No one. They keep them in the pantry.
Oh, okay.
Where
you
I
sneak
was.
out at night.
I was sneaking out to get their crackers.
I gotcha. Do they have gluten-free crackers?
Don't taunt me.
Don't bring your real life into this podcast.
Okay, so for those who don't know, so I'm not celiac. I decided to go on a gluten-free diet for health reasons and because...
because she hates us all.
Right. I decided to go on this diet, but the other curators, there are 4 of us.
So here's the thing about Curator War Beauty. She can do nothing alone. If she does something, the other 4 of us follow her like puppies, looking for approval. So now all 4 curators have gone gluten-free.
It's not bad.
It's actually not that bad.
You just have to like to cook a lot.
I do enjoy cooking.
Right. So I'm trying to, get healthy and do my thing, slim down.
All from their parents' basement.
All from your parents' basement. Which is funny because I also play World of Warcraft.
In the basement?
In the basement.
Oh, how stereotypical.
I used to live in a basement and play World of Warcraft.
Speaking of World of Warcraft, I wanted to tell you this. My coworkers were talking about it the other day, and I was asked who my favorite NPC was.
And you said? Obviously Ted.
Ted is a playable character.
Right.
He's not an NPC.
Right. Well, who is your favorite NPC then? Do you even know any NPCs?
I like Draca. I think she's pretty cool.
Draka?
She's pretty hot.
Gosh.
Do you not like her?
You guys, she really said Draca. It's Draka.
Well.
Draka, wife of Durotan, mother of Thrall.
Stop. This is not it. This ain't it, sis. Yeah, they were just asking me what my favorite NPC was and stuff, and I was like...
So you said Draca? Okay.
Yeah. I said Draca, and they were all like, who is that? Because none of them have played Shadowlands.
They're all fired. I've fired all of them.
Okay, good. One of them was my ex-boyfriend, so
good,
that's fine.
Because they're all fired.
Good. Go into Starbucks and fire them all.
This is
wonderful. This is the best. Okay, so what are we talking about this week?
Well, this week I thought... so I've been listening to some of the feedback we've been getting from people that we know and some people that have left reviews. Thank you, Wayland, again.
Wow, you're giving him a 2-episode shout out.
Well, he was the only one who left a review when we asked for it.
That's true, and we have no new ones this week.
So I've been listening to the feedback, and some of the popular sentiment is that everyone wants to know a little bit more of the science and less of the conspiracy. Because, let's be honest, we're inundated with the conspiracy, and it's cool and fun to think about.
Of course.
But everyone seems to think it's cooler that there are logical, rational explanations you can apply to these conspiracies. Now, whether you buy into them or not, that's kind of, your own choice. But we're here to just offer you an explanation that doesn't make it seem so out of touch with reality.
Right. That's kind of the premise of the whole show, right? Is to provide a rational, scientific explanation for traditionally not scientific concepts.
Exactly. So today I wanted to hit on a subject before we really get further into things, like different types of divinations or numerology or cursing or sacred objects and stuff like that.
You're just reading our podcast list idea.
Yeah,
to the audience.
Listen. Before we get into all of that, I wanted to talk about a principle that I think is really important and not understood about psychic and spiritual and occulty and otherworldly phenomena. And that is, are you ready for this?
I'm scared.
It is the theory of electricity.
Okay, so for the audience, a little peek behind the curtains for the audience. I knew that this was our topic for the week. I still don't know what that means or why that's our topic for the week.
Okay, so listen. Electricity is the set of physical phenomena associated with the presence... What?
Did you say setaphysical?
I said set of physical. Physical phenomena
what is that? I've never heard of that before.
associated with the presence and motion of matter that has the properties of an electric charge. So it's related to magnetism, both being part of the phenomena of electromagnetism and beyond. Because I would say as described by Maxwell's equation, but no one would know what that is. So
that's the definition off of Wikipedia for electricity.
yes, that is the definition of Wikipedia for electricity.
Okay. So why are we talking about electricity?
Well, it's important to understand because I think one of the most common things I hear when you're having those talks with your friends at like 2 a.m. and you feel like you should be high or asleep, but you're sitting there talking about this one time you saw a ghost.
Sure.
Right. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but you and your buddies
certainly can
swap ghost stories. And then you have that one friend who's always just like hard line skeptic because nothing ever happens to them.
Right. Yeah.
That's because of electricity.
Okay.
So humans conduct electrical current. If you don't believe me, you can just straight Google that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, your body has an electric function.
Right. And we have an electromagnetic kind of outer shell that we exude.
Sure.
And it's measurable. It's viewable by modern science. So humans conduct electricity. Now, when it comes to psychic or spiritual phenomena, it becomes a matter of how well do you conduct electricity? Because now I want you to imagine that those sorts of cool things that are happening, like ghosts or voices or the heavens opening up and raining pixie dust on your head.
Or to bring it to our last episode, to look into a crystal ball and get the answers from the gods.
Right. Well,
that kind of stuff. We
mentioned not everyone can do that. And that is both true and false because everybody has the capability. Everyone is born with the latent, innate ability to do that.
Right.
But what makes some people more talented than others is simply their ability to conduct electricity, and that is biochemistry.
Yeah, that's something that you can't inherently change about yourself. That's not something you can learn.
No. So there are people who are born, and we'll use electrical terminology, grounder and conductor.
Okay.
So
do you want to go into what those terms mean in an electrical sense first?
Well, sure. So grounding is something that stops or blocks the flow of electricity. It does not conduct an electrical charge.
At all.
Yeah. At all, period.
Yeah.
So that's why...
You have to have a grounder to have an electric circuit, though.
Yes. Or you'll fry everything.
Right.
So, for example, like if there's a lightning storm, that's why experts say get into your car. Because the rubber of your tires will not conduct the electricity. Instead, the metal of the car will diffuse the lightning strike like an airplane.
Sure.
It will diffuse the lightning strike and then you won't blow up because of the rubber in your tires.
Right. Well, think of grounding as kind of a literal term of the reason that term came to be is because people would stick a copper rod into the ground so that it could absorb electricity and dissipate into the earth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same concept with lightning rods that we still use today.
Right.
It's just a copper wire that redirects the energy into the ground where it'll stop.
Exactly. So some people are naturally like this. They are grounders. Now, of course, how can we be grounders if everyone conducts electricity? Well, when you talk about psychic and religious and spiritual phenomena, you're talking about very hypersensitive, very specific wavelengths and types of electricity and types of current being conducted. Everything operates on different frequencies, on specific hertzes, etc. And these are all measurements for basic scientific principles that you can measure these phenomena by. But just keep in mind, this is pretty much all you can measure these phenomena by.
Sure.
But some people just are not naturally attuned for those wavelengths, for those frequencies, for those hertzes.
Okay.
They're not attuned for those charges.
Okay. And so those people we would call grounders.
We would call them grounders. So
because that's where the electricity stops in those people.
Right. They kind of diffuse.
Okay.
So it's not, okay. For example, to put this into perspective, let's say a ghost pops up.
Okay.
Right. And your friends are always like, oh my gosh, this ghost pops up in my room every single night, right in the corner. Right. Well, if you're a natural grounder, It's not that the ghost isn't going to pop up, it's that the amount of electrical energy needed to make a manifestation simply cannot happen around you because you have diffused a significant portion of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So the phenomena is still happening. It just isn't gaining enough charge to manifest in a very like raw and physical way.
Okay. So then on the opposite end, you have conductors.
Right. And conductors are obviously people who conduct electricity.
Right. And who electricity flows through them very naturally.
Right. So these people are able to not only conduct electricity, but a lot of times unwittingly, they build up their own electrical charge and they give power to something.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I've seen people like that.
So let's say, I'm trying to think of a really good example that would be really easy to follow. Let's say a Ouija board, for example,
Okay.
a spirit board, which is
A Waluigi board.
a Waluigi board. Sorry, I love the Waluigi board. So let's say you have a Ouija board and you and your friend are doing this Ouija board, right?
Okay.
And you're asking the questions and the thing is going, but then it starts like rocketing and zooming
Okay.
everywhere. And you always notice that like, wow, stuff like that always happens to me, or there's always weird occurrences, or I always make TVs kind of have electrical interference and,
Yeah, it's not so much of you recognizing that you're doing those things, but more of like, oh, weird stuff always happens to me or around me, and even to the point where like your friends will take notice of like every time you walk into the room, the TV goes static. Are you a ghost?
Are you a ghost?
Are
And
you a
that's
ghost?
that's the real point of this episode, you guys, is how to know if you're a ghost. No, but it's exactly it. Is people will take notice typically the stronger it is. And a lot of time people do it unconsciously. They don't
Oh, yeah, of course.
they don't know that they're conductors. They're just like, wow, yeah, every time I walk into the room, everyone's cell phones suddenly like lose 10% battery.
Yeah, it's just a natural phenomenon about yourself that you aren't aware of. So when these particular people get really passionate about something, I think that has a larger effect.
Yeah, definitely. Emotions are one of the number one ways to kind of supercharge
Right.
the conduits that are the human body.
Right.
So here we have these two people, your grounders and conductors. And I wanted to talk about them because going forward, I think this will really help people relate to this realm easier. Start taking notice. Does weird stuff happen around you?
Yeah.
Does nothing ever happen? People who are like, I'm so psychic, or I see ghosts all the time and it's all the time everywhere around, and then you show up and like literally nothing happens.
Sure.
Well, you need to consider you're probably a grounder.
Well, there's also other ways to test this that are not quite so fantastical.
Sure.
There are ways you can test, how good are you at meditation?
That
Are
is
you
a
good
really
at
good one.
trancing? If you have a really hard time getting out of your mind, then you may be a grounder.
That's true.
If you have a very easy time, just you lay down, close your eyes, and boom, you're gone, then you might be more of a natural conductor than
Right.
other people can be.
Actually, I would say that's probably the easiest test to do at
Yeah.
home is lay down and meditate and try to kind of travel out of your own body. And if it's difficult if you've never done it, even for
Sure.
conductors.
It takes practice to do it, but
Right.
you will kind of have an inclination of whether you are naturally gifted at this or not.
There is a theory to be had too, and this is just a theory, so I don't
A
know.
game theory.
Right.
Sorry.
I don't know how much stock I put in this, but that natural conductors generate more static electricity. So like when you touch stuff, you shock things more.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, it is a theory. Again, I don't know how much I buy into it though, because there's certainly, when you get into like electromagnetism, it starts getting kind of like real theory,
Sure.
like really, really theory.
Sure. Real provable science.
Well, yes, but no at the same time.
Sure.
So it's like it is proved, but at the same time, it's not.
Okay. Kind of like a lot of the stuff we talk about.
Right.
Okay.
Because I mean, in theory, you could shoot lightning out of your fingers.
So is there anything that grounders can do to still have, a foot in the metaphysical world and have, be whatever they want to be?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just because you're a natural grounder doesn't mean that you aren't conducting electricity. It just means that you're diffusing electricity better than other things. So if you're a grounder, practice is going to make
Sure, and it's going to be harder for them.
and you're fighting an
Gonna get
uphill battle.
frustrated.
You're going to be frustrated, and that's okay if you're frustrated, but don't give up because ultimately these things are like muscles.
Does high energy, like emotion, help grounders as well?
Yes, and people who are grounders are typically not incredibly highly emotional people.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so when someone's a grounder, they're typically very, very chill, they're very smooth,
Grounded.
they're very grounded, you might say. So, okay, that's actually really funny you bring that up because that is kind of where this terminology stems from.
Sure, right.
Is
I mean, that's why we call people that.
Right, is you're grounded. Well, if you're considered grounded in your life, you're probably grounded from phenomena as well.
Sure.
Not always the case, but to not be that case takes a lot of study and practice.
Of course.
Because anyone can consciously, I guess, overcome conducting and grounding.
Okay, can they?
Well, right. So grounders can conduct, but it takes conscious effort. And the same way that conductors can be grounded, and it takes conscious effort. Okay. So I don't know if you guys ever have this, but you have that friend who's really, really like kind of maybe flighty with their emotions, and it's always super up and down.
Don't call me out like this. You called me out last week on my own show. Stop this.
Well, it's always a super up and down roller coaster.
Sure.
Right? And they're always such extreme emotion, and when they feel it so extreme, and
Of course.
you know, bad things always seem to happen to them or good things always seem to happen to them. There's like they have kind of no smooth middle ground.
There's no in between.
Right.
It's all or nothing with these people.
Right. That's typically a conductor.
Really?
Yes.
What do you think I am?
I think you're a conductor.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I know you're a conductor.
Yes, I am.
You're like psychic supreme.
So I'm actually naturally a conductor, but because I have been studying for so long, I have taught myself how to be grounded and diffuse things. So I don't just have,
Well, that's probably a useful skill for conductors.
it's very useful. And
Because we were talking about like grounders learning how to conduct better. But I guess it's also important for conductors to be able to ground themselves.
well, so now we're getting into kind of basic psychological principles of, how they teach people who experience the heighten and lows of
Sure.
the emotional roller coaster. They teach them how to kind of ride the wave on a smooth middle ground. Same thing for people that are conductors. You just need to learn how to ride that smooth middle ground.
It's fascinating.
Right. And I personally have never seen this, but there is merit to the theory that you can change and switch to the other.
Really?
But I think that comes with age and hormone change.
Do you think something significant like a trauma could switch a person?
Yes. So we do have instances of people who were, because most people are pretty like middle ground
I would
with
say
it.
so,
They're
yeah.
not one way or the other pretty extreme. They're very centrist.
Sure.
But people who then experience extreme trauma all of a sudden activates this conductor sense to them.
Hey, that's interesting.
And that's because I personally believe, this is War Beauty's opinion,
Oh boy. War Beauty has opinions.
right? This War Beauty's opinion that so we know that trauma significantly changes the brain.
Right. It does.
It literally affects your nervous system.
Physically changes. It literally scars the brain. Like,
Yes.
Yes.
Literally physically changes your
Yeah.
brain and body. Okay. That's non-negotiable.
Right.
I think because of that, you are able to then become, let's say you were a grounder, you would be able to become a conductor
Interesting.
because it requires literal physical change. So you have a near-death experience, and now all of a sudden you can see
You
ghosts
can
everywhere.
see ghosts.
You can see ghosts everywhere, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because you have people that would say like, oh, because they had a near-death experience, they were like closer to death, and so now they can see death wherever they go. But I never considered like it's just their literal energy change, their inherent electricity of their bodies.
Right. And again, not to invalidate people who have, been closer to death and had these experiences, but there's two ways you can think about this. You can think about it in the ultra scientific sense where, yes, you experienced a literal physical and chemical change, which would literally change your biological makeup.
Yes.
Like you can't,
And it does,
you cannot argue that. That's just medical science.
of course.
But
People can argue.
okay,
People
that's
do
true.
still argue it.
Right, but
It's still
Okay.
debated in the psychology world of like, does trauma literally leave like a scar on your brain, even though
except that it does.
the answer is yes, and you can see it.
Right, except that we can prove that it does, but that's not my
Go
business.
off, I guess.
But go off, I guess. But the other way to look at this, and someone who is, I wouldn't say uneducated, I would just say not scientifically minded.
Sure.
So a more spiritually and religious minded person is going to come at this from, well, I was closer to death. And death is considered,
a big like turning point or a big event.
It's exactly, it's a I would say traumatic event.
Yeah.
Because trauma doesn't necessarily mean negative.
Yes. Yes. Child being born is a traumatic experience.
Well, right. So, when you touch the veil of death, and death is seen as this really powerful energy source. So who's to say that death isn't some sort of, or that veil of death and coming in contact with it isn't some sort of major, I guess electrical storm would be the best terminology here.
That makes sense.
That causes literal physiological changes. And now, because you have touched this energy source, you are now changed forever. But interesting to note, you would be changed forever in the way that you touched death. And what I mean by that is if you have a near-death experience, you're not suddenly going to develop other type of phenomena that happen. You're more than likely going to start seeing dead people, and you're going to interact with spirits, because death is a very specific.
Sure. So a different trauma would trigger a different response in your brain, and you would have a different like connection to the electricity or paranormal or whatever.
Right. That's why if you get struck by lightning, you're probably not going to start seeing dead people, because death didn't touch you.
You'll start seeing the more like electrical things, like you walk into a room and batteries die.
Right. And you could start seeing
staticky TVs,
auras around people. So people get like glows around them. So depending on what energy source changes you or touches you, is going to depend on how your own energy source is changed.
That's fascinating. I've never asked you before, but do you see auras?
I do not. Okay, so that's called clairvoyancy. And clair being the French word for clear. So clairvoyancy is clear sight, eye.
It's a whole different episode.
Well, it is, but just for the viewers at home real quick, clairvoyancy is not something I have. I actually have clairsentience, which is clear knowing.
That's so you and I both.
Right. It's the difference between looking at somebody and seeing their aura and being able to know about them, or looking at somebody, just seeing the person,
and you just know things about them.
But it's almost like information gets downloaded into your brain without explanation.
It is. It's quite weird.
It is an interesting phenomena.
It is. I've been learning a little bit more about it as I have experienced it more.
And they're all muscles that you can exercise.
Yeah, I'm trying.
It's good. I wish everyone would do it.
We'll have an episode about that eventually.
Yeah, definitely. So here are some things that I want to point out that I think are really important for our viewers, because one of my goals personally is that I want to change the way that the language used around metaphysics,
of course,
is influenced. And one thing I can't stand are these like Instagram posts where you see, like 7 signs you're an empath.
I love those. Just kidding, I don't.
Right.
But I do see them quite frequently.
Right. So you see like how to know you're a witch, and it's like,
how do you know you're a witch? Do you practice witchcraft? Okay, that's how.
Well, right.
They'll be like, you'll know you're a witch if you notice repeating numbers a lot, or if you have a green thumb and you're really good at gardening. And it's like, do you practice witchcraft though? Because that's the only qualifier.
Right. That's like kind of the number one indicator right there.
The only one. Yes, I've noticed quite a few of those posts.
Well, the ones that bother me are like, 10 signs that you're an empath.
Mm.
And then it lists the most generic nonsense. And it's like,
you have feelings. You have a heart. You have blood in your body. It's like, well, I guess that's me.
Right. That's basically what they say. I'm sorry, but that's so accurate, it hurts. They basically say that. And then you have so many people running around going, well, that's me. I'm this amazing empath, and I'm the great whatever. I'm the great poobah of the universe. Here's the problem with that, though. Is it completely... Well, first off, there's a lot of other problems. But here's my big problem, is that it negates the science heavily, because it's not
There's
made...
none of it.
There's no
It's just
science.
not there.
Well, I suppose it's medical science.
You do have blood in your body.
You do. If you don't, please write us. We want to know. You'll be on our show.
Please. We'll have a guest spot for
Right.
you.
Just for you. But
Vampires do not interact.
but it negates the science, and then I think people get these expectations built up, so they see, oh my gosh, I could see from the gods, or oh my gosh, I might be able to, see the dead.
Well, the real and immediate problem with those kinds of posts that, we've all seen that are 10 signs you're an empath is that they are so generic that people identify with that, and then they take it into their own hands to give other people advice that they're not qualified to give, and they take on the role of your therapist, and
Right.
and that can get dangerous because they don't actually know what they're talking about.
No. And then what's even worse, and what hurts the work that we're trying to do, is then people get disillusioned because something happens or something doesn't happen.
Right.
This is more common than not. Something doesn't happen, and they think, oh my gosh, this is all fake.
Right.
And they get totally disillusioned with it because nobody who understood it
Explained it to
them that, humans are empathic. We are empathic creatures. That does not inherently make you an empath
them. Right.
by our standards. So everyone's an empath at their baseline. Everyone can conduct electricity. Doesn't mean you can see God.
Right.
Right. These are very different things. And I feel like so many people get set up for failure. And when they do fail, they get frustrated, they get disillusioned, or better yet, they turn around and sell you snake oil.
Yeah. I always thought that my problem with the Instagram posts that say, cats are always drawn to you, or you're good at gardening. It's like, well, if I consider myself a witch and I suck at gardening, then I guess I'm not actually. And they have a bad habit of discrediting people for what they are and trying to define people that they don't know. And that's kind of where I have a problem with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that really creates a sense of identity crisis in people.
It does, because then you get defensive about the things that you do. If you practice witchcraft in whatever form that may be, then you're a witch. Or if you don't want to call yourself that, you're whatever you are. And no random general post on Instagram is going to define that for you.
Absolutely. And so, I want you guys to start looking at those things with critical eyes, because we'll talk about them every now and then.
We will, especially as we get more and more engaged with social media.
Right. Do you want to tell them what we did?
I don't. Ugh.
We made a TikTok.
Okay, War Beauty made me make a TikTok.
We made a TikTok.
I was forced against my will. But yes, we have a TikTok. It's at One Eye Oddities if you want to follow us. I think mostly we'll just be posting, quick thought processes of metaphysical things or something that maybe we forgot to mention in an episode and we wanted to just bring attention to it real quick.
Right.
Things like that. And, just get a little bit behind the scenes with us, which could be fun for you, I guess. More work for me.
Could it be fun for them? If they could see us right now, they would probably laugh.
I can see us right now, and I'm laughing.
That's fair.
That's podcasting, baby.
Well, I hope that the audio quality has improved.
It feels like it has.
Guess we'll find out, won't we?
We're trying our best.
The sacrifices we make.
Every day is a learning experience. For those who are missing out on the joke, we are both currently huddled together around a microphone under a very heavy blanket to try to minimize the outside noise.
Right. And for those who have been...
And it feels intimate. I feel like we've grown closer together.
Literally, we've grown closer together.
Yeah.
I threatened to just make this 20 minutes of us making out sounds.
That'll be next week.
Yeah. Join us next week to just listen to some ASMR. But for those who have given us feedback for our podcast, thank you so much.
Y'all are the best.
Yeah, thanks for sticking with us. This is the first time we've really ever gotten deep into a serious podcast like this.
Sure, and it's a learning experience.
I used to host a radio show every Wednesdays. called
Every
War Beauty
Wednesday.
Wednesdays.
Yeah, you did. I never listened to it.
It was on Blog Talk Radio.
I never listened to it, not once.
It's okay.
I think maybe one episode I attended because you put that one up in our group chat. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'll listen to it
Thanks.
once. And even then I had like the volume like pretty low because I was doing other stuff.
Well, anyway, so this has been Curator War
Hey,
Beauty.
this is my job. This has been Midnight Curiosities. Midnight Curiosities is hosted by our parent company, One Eye Oddities, a new way to see magic. I don't think we have anyone to shout out this week because we did not get any new reviews.
No, please subscribe and leave us a review.
I mean, we can shout out our friends who have given us very helpful and insightful reviews and advice toward making this the best thing that it can be.
Right. Once again, thank you to Emeritus. He is...
Did you get a pronunciation correction?
Listen, he laughed at me because, okay, I'm gonna tell you the story. I know that it's Emeritus because it's a Latin word, duh, but I swear I have heard him call himself Emeritus, and we discussed it, and he was cracking up because he heard this, and he was just like laughing. I was like, I swear I've heard you call yourself that. So I was like, I debated, and I had a panic moment. And so it is, in fact, he does pronounce it Emeritus.
Well, we appreciate him nonetheless.
Yes. And also shout out to our friend, Mr. Aiden.
Oh, yeah. Aiden gave us some really, really great feedback.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Aiden. We'll have him on one day.
Yeah, so we're actually open for guests. So I want you guys to keep in mind, you may hear some guests come in every now and then. It's going to be friends, maybe other experts.
Sure. We're good at a lot of things, but we're not experts in everything. And so sometimes it's fitting to bring in an expert on a specific subject.
Right.
I think in the early episodes, we've been sticking to things that we know pretty well. But, you know, as it gets bigger and broader, more specific, even the opposite of broader, we can bring in people that are good at different things.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to give you guys...
bring the other curators in.
Oh, absolutely. The other curators can't wait.
Yeah, it's going to be great. But until then, I am Curator Raquel.
And I'm Curator War Beauty.
And don't forget to...
become an oddity.
Bye, everybody.